Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just go on the got it. Okay. Everything I say can be used against me in a court of law. All right, so with that in mind, let's go for it. All right, so the board was comfortable with that. Hey, if we don't want to do something that's going to cost people more, and I didn't want to go forward with CCA if all it was going to do was, provide the same type of, energy that's generated without any environmental benefit. So we hired Joule Assets and we signed a contract with them. And the contract simply said, once again, it did not force our hand to ever have to go into CCA. It simply said, if you do choose to do CCA, then over the next 18 months, we will be your administrator. If after that time, we have not come upon a CCA arrangement, then it sunsets. So step two was, once again, it did not obligate the Village of Lima to do CCA. It just provided us with the administrative background to get more information. We were hoping at that time that surrounding communities would kind of join us to create enough market power to be able to negotiate a decent deal and to get renewable energy suppliers interested. Because Lima, frankly, only has about 700 or 800 electric accounts in the village. So, we're not a dominant market player. For several years, that really went nowhere. And I think we went out for bid once and, really nothing of that met our criteria occurred. So things went really dormant for many years until about 2 years ago. Joule and their partner at the time, Rocktricity in Rochester, said, hey, we can get you into community solar as a first step. And the way the community solar would work is, you don't actually, being small makes you a little bit more nimble, because as solar arrays come on board, one array or even a partial of array could supply your whole village. Unlike if you're a large municipality and want to go into community solar, it may have to get rolled out over several years as the generating capacity comes on board. So we said, okay, yeah. And it just seemed like, how could you not sign up for this? It would bring 10%, approximately 10% savings on each resident's electric bill. And it's not 10% on just the supply. It's on the entire bill, supply and delivery, which, as you know, delivery, at least on my bill, is more than supply now, quite a bit more. So, and the cost of this is zero. And if we did it with CCA, even if people weren't paying attention, they're getting the credit. So we said, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So we started the public information. At that time it was COVID and all had to be done on Zoom and so forth.
Hey, John.
And yes.
I think, does Mary Alice have a question, or is that from, Jonathan?
That was me.
Yeah.
It's a minor question, but going back a little ways, you were saying that the two criteria were saving money and being totally renewable. And I was just curious because, everybody on this call would certainly want both of those criteria to happen, but the CCA law doesn't require it to be totally renewable, does it? And I wonder how easy it was to sell that criteria to the rest of your board.
Just that we would save and be 100% renewable.
Yeah, did they care about I mean, that could almost be
No.
a turn off in some communities.
Yeah, no, Jonathan, they were, since I was going to do all the work, okay, and they were interested in doing none of the work. Okay, so hey, if you want to do CCA with just a standard mix, you go to it. But I wasn't going to do it.
Okay.
So as far as they're concerned is, well, we could save money and have to do nothing.
Yeah.
Sounds perfect. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah,
They bought in. They bought in.
yeah. Now we'll come back to the story a little bit, Jonathan. When we got into bidding, we did put, I think, a standard mix in there, and I'll just talk about how we dealt with that. But you know, so anyway, the community solar thing came up as an opportunity, so we jumped on that, and in that process, then the critical mass came about where 100% renewable supply looked like we would be able to do it. So we did both of those programs, community solar and CCA, simultaneously. And it was really advantageous to do that at the time because, all right, so we had the 10% savings locked in. So that afforded us that even if we went with a 100% renewable, which was higher than the current default national grid price, with the 10% savings with our program, we met that criteria of still saving people money. And we went out for bid at, oh, Marie.
You're muted, Marie.
You're muted.
Oh,
Thank you. Sorry. Tell me again, John, you weren't paying a delivery fee to, who are you with? RG&E?
No, National Grid.
National Grid.
No, when my reference to a delivery charge was that the 10% solar credit would be equal to 10% of delivery plus supply on people's bills. Okay.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow. Sign me up.
Yeah. I mean, now things are, you know, I believe the lowest allowable on community solar, I don't know if the Public Service Commission or what has this rule, but you have to, the solar developer has to give at least 5%.
Yeah.
But a couple
But
years
not on
ago,
delivery.
well,
Just on supply.
okay, well,
But they're doing it through the CCA, so
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
different story than.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Okay.
Oh, we lost you.
okay. Okay, well, our deal was 10% on the entire bill. Okay. So what they did is they would look at the previous year's usage on each customer, calculate, you know, how much they spent, and then figure out how many solar tax or solar credits that would require to come up with 10% of that. So I don't know what other deals are, but that's our deal. All right, so we had the community solar, and before, you know, that was in the works. So then, like I mentioned, the 100% renewable piece was coming on board, and Gina, as you know, one of the incentives on that was we were getting really close to the highest level of community, the NYSERDA's Clean Energy Community Program, where we were going to, you know, qualify for $100,000 prize if, you know, we did CCA with 100% renewable. So that was one little plus. But like yeah. So we went out for bid, and you have to remember we went out for bid 2021. Okay. So let's see, that's 2022. Yeah, I'm forgetting, but yeah, it's a little over a year ago. But anyway, as part of your educational material for your constituents, you have to, obviously tell them what your CCA price is going to be. And your benchmark is the 12-month period, average period prior. So that brought us back. So our benchmark period was directly in the pandemic peak, okay, of COVID, where natural gas prices have plummeted. Electric prices were at all-time lows, okay? So we had to benchmark against 4.41 cents per kilowatt hour, all right?
Absolutely.
So, now, even though at the time of the bid, National Grid's price was, I think, around 5 cents or over 5 cents and on its way up. And I think most of you know most of those prices have continued to go up. But anyway, we had to benchmark against 4.41. All right. So, so we got a bid through Joule Community Energy of 5.91 cents a kilowatt hour. All right. Now, I told the board, well, if National Grid's prices were continuing to be 4.41, we couldn't tell people we're going to save you money. But it really wasn't that far off. So if we had done calculations that, if National Grid's prices were in the high fours, like 4.9 cents, 4.8 cents a kilowatt hour, once you tacked on the 10% savings on the entire bill, our 5.91 on the renewable coupled with the 10% savings on the entire bill would put us on economic par with, 4.9. So the board was kind of 50-50 on it, and the clean energy community, a little kicker, put us over saying, hey, we're going to get 100 grand if we do this. So the board elected to go forward with the 5.91. Now, we went forward, and people were given several opportunities to opt out. You could do it by mail, you could do it by phone, you could do it online, and you got multiple letters stating that. We had 40% of our customers opted out of the 100% renewable, because they looked at the letter and said 4.41 versus 5.91 is not a good deal. Now, even though, we mentioned in the letter that the price now is not 4.41, it's likely to go much higher. And just as a footnote, since we've enacted it, National Grid's price, at least for, I think, the first 3 or 4 months, and I don't have data since then, but at least the first 3 or 4 months, National Grid's prices were above the 5.91. In fact, right at the commencement of the program, National Grid's prices had spiked up over 7 cents a kilowatt hour. But anyway, we got 60%, people stayed with it. On the community solar, it's over 90%. You got to wonder about those 10% who opted out of savings and no cost, but they did. I'm confident as we go forward with our next bid, which will be next June or July, we'll have a track record of our 5.91 against National Grid's, which I don't believe is going to beat it. And if it beats it, it's not going to be by more than 1/10 of a cent. So I think we'll have a lot more luck then. So the fact that the default prices that the utilities are charging are higher, I'm hoping that this will make it easier for other communities to get more participation. It certainly, I think it will with us. Like I said, I think our educational, materials went out at the, worst possible time with that 4.41 benchmark. But I will say that we didn't have anybody flooding into, nobody really came to any of our board meetings to say, hey, I'm angry about this. Why is government getting involved? People simply, if they didn't want to do it, it was so easy to opt out. And the other part of the CCA contract is if for some reason you weren't paying attention and you got signed up, the contract is you can opt out at any time, no penalty. Okay. So it doesn't seem like what you thought, or you weren't paying attention to the multiple mailings and public information we spread out there, and you found out from your neighbor and you looked at your bill and said, huh, Village of Lima, I don't want that. You can opt out. So it's a very easy process. And we really, we didn't get anybody coming to a board meeting or sending us any, hate mail or anything. It was just, okay, you don't want to do it, just opt out. We didn't really, never argued with anybody. And actually our administrator took care of all those calls and data processing. And, they're instructed that, okay, you don't want to do it, you're out. So in summary, the CCA is giving local control over a decision that if it isn't invoked, the power company becomes the default. So if people think, well, I don't want government, well, government is already deciding for you that the utility will be your default supplier if you don't select an ESCO. So we're about halfway through our 2-year contract. And like I said, we'll be preparing for a new bidding process next summer. So let's just open up for questions now. Yeah, Marie.
Thank you,
I'd like to hear something about how it was to work with Jewel, and what did you think of the community education program that they put together? How much of that did they do? How much did you need to do?
Most of our experience with, well, there's two. There's the very first part with Jewel. They were very helpful in coming to our board meetings. They came to multiple board meetings, explaining the CCA, a lot of the nitty gritty with the board. So that was extremely helpful. Okay, so they were very responsive to coming and doing that. Now, as time went on, they subcontracted out when we went forward with the bid, and we're going forward with CCA a year ago. They had subcontracted with a local company here in Rochester known as Rocktricity. So Rocktricity actually did our public outreach and so forth. And what I'll say with that is, I was an educator for 36 years, and I know that students' attention spans are very limited. And they created a letter that was like 4 pages long. And I said, oh, no, you can't do that. That's not going to work. And, they told me, well, all these things that we have in here are required by the Public Service Commission. I said, oh, really? I said, well, then we're going to at least have to put a cover letter on this that's 2 paragraphs long that explained in just plain English the gist of this thing. Okay. Because, for instance, our description of community solar was, okay, no credit check, no nothing, you don't have to do anything, there's no cost, and you're going to get approximately a 10% savings on your bill. Okay. On theirs, and I think that it was the Public Service Commission, there's this page you had to put on, it was kind of like what you see when you sign up for a credit card or a loan, So it said, first of all, cost of program, and it said 90% of solar credits. Okay. So we had several people look at that and say, residents say, wait a minute, you said it wasn't going to cost, and it's now saying the cost is 90% of the solar credits. And you have to explain to people now, the more things you tell people that aren't needed, the more confusion. Okay. All right.
Sure.
So here's what happens. the solar array has 100% of the solar credits, okay? All right, and it hasn't cost you anything. The solar developer is going to keep 90% of them and going to give you 10% for you doing nothing, okay? So in a sense, there really is no cost to you, but if someone, but that's the kind of gobbledygook that this letter had that just made things convoluted and confusing, okay? So I don't think it was so much the fault of Rocktricity, but I don't know. When you go forward with this, that's the time to really scrutinize the administrator and say, okay, show me exactly what the bare minimum is, okay, of information. I mean, we're not trying to keep anything away from people, but we just want to keep it concise so that people will take enough time and be able to understand it. But find out what's the least amount that you have to say about all these technical issues. All right. And then, try to make the letter not so long, or maybe have multiple letters that deal with different things. But the other complication with us is we were doing 2 programs of community solar and 100% renewable. And then people are getting confused. Why is there 2 programs? So that was a little bit difficult, but if we didn't do the community solar at the same time, we wouldn't have been able to do 100% renewable because the price differential. So, okay, Michael, everybody's got their hand up. Oh my gosh.
I don't think I think Mary Alice or Dawn might be ahead of me.
Okay. All right, Mary Alice. Don.
I just have a couple questions. So people, if they opt out, they have to wait for the next contract to opt back in, right?
No, they actually can opt back. They can opt in. So yes, I believe they can. I know if someone new is moving in and wasn't there for the initial inception. In fact, part of the process, I think Rocktricity has sent out letters to new accounts after the first year and invited them in. So I don't believe there is that.
That barrier.
Yeah. So you can opt out, opt back in. Yeah, it's an easy process.
So did they run the public info past you before implementing? Did you?
Oh yeah, we had
that?
opportunity for it, so it's, so I marked up their thing down to what I thought it was, and then they came back and said, no, that's not going to meet the PSC requirements. We got to pretty much keep all the stuff in our letter. And I said, oh my gosh. So then I said, well, can we at least put our own cover letter in front of that? But that brought it, Mary Alice, up to 5 pages long. And it's almost as if you get this big tome and you just don't read any of it. Right.
Well, you might read the cover letter. That's kind of like the health insurance. I get 6 pages and I look through the.
Right.
How does the CCA impact net metering? Like, we're net meterers, and so do you know how that?
Yeah, because I'm a net meter, so I have the solar on my house. So first of all, if you have solar on your home, you cannot participate in community solar. That's a state regulation. So I can't participate with that. Also, if someone is already signed up with a community solar, then they can't be part of the CCA community solar either.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. Anyway, Don, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, John, thanks. Sorry I was late to the meeting. I did watch your webinar, so I probably missed hopefully I missed what you said at the webinar. So a couple of questions. You said that you're going out to bid in 2 years from your startup. Is that a typical renewal? Is a 2-year period?
Yeah, that's been, pretty standard from what I understand, 2-year contracts. Yeah.
Okay. So another question is, you talked about the $100,000 prize a lot in the webinar. And I'm curious if that funding is still available.
Yes. there are only so many of those prizes out there. I think in the Finger Lakes region up where we are, Canandaigua's met the 5,000 and Lima has. So there's certain number for larger communities and then a certain number for smaller communities. So now there are along the way, $10,000 grants for reaching 3,000. There's like 40 of those awards. So I'm sure those aren't taken. There's a 20,000 award for reaching 4,000. And there's like 10 or 12 of those in each region. It's just that once you get up to the top one, you get to 5,000 points. That's a $70,000 grant. And I think there's only like a handful of those. So yeah, the faster you move toward it. But you could, Don, are you in the program now?
Am I in the program?
Or is your municipality in the?
So I'm with Caroline with the rest of the gang here, so
Okay.
I'm not in the program, and I'm actually like you. I have a solar system, so I personally won't be able to benefit from this, but I understand what the program offers to the community, and taking control of the source of your electricity is and your pricing is a real plus. So I get all that's happened on that, which is really leads into my last and follow-up question is, from your webinar, it was really clear that there's a lot of hand holding with the municipal board, and you explained why that was important. And I would just say that tender loving care is probably why it was successful. And I'm curious, because I know in our county, we're talking about maybe several municipalities getting involved with it, doing this together so we have a larger mix, but at the same time, we don't get the tender loving care of just being the one municipality. So any insight you might have about joining with a larger consortium versus doing it individually would be helpful.
Okay. Well, we really didn't have the choice of going to a larger consortium. Our bid went out with the village of Brockport. So it was just Brockport's probably quite a bit bigger than we are. It's there's a state university there. But it was just the two of us. Now, the thing that helped us, even though we were a small unit, is that Jewel Community was going out for bid at that time for City of Rochester and some other big accounts. So as they, so we didn't get quite the price that the City of Rochester garnered, but I believe with the negotiations and so forth that Jewel and the relationships that they had with energy suppliers to say, hey, we've got a couple smaller ones here, give them a deal for us. Okay, so I do believe that we did get a better deal because Jewel was also going out for bid for other larger municipalities. Now, there's two ways on the bigger. Okay, if it's community solar, I would say it's more advantageous to do it yourself. Okay, because as the bigger the entity is, the more difficult it's going to be to find the available solar array resources to supply everybody. And it's probably going to have to get rolled out over a long period of time. If you do it with your own town, it's likely that you could find a single project or two projects at most that could supply, your town and get it done in one fell swoop. So on community solar, I think it's better to do it alone. Now, on the 100% renewable supply, which, Don, I will say that even though you have solar on your house, if your solar on your house was not producing 100% of your needs, you could still be buying the rest of your power. And that's what I do,
Right.
Because my array doesn't quite meet with, now that I have 2 electric cars, it's not doing it. So, I have the 100% renewable. But on the 100% renewable, that's where you really have to I'm not an expert on the markets, but that's where your administrator and Jewel assets would be able to tell you, you know, what's like the ideal size of a consortium to go out there. My feeling is just going it alone, it might be too small. And going together, a better market share. Generally, I mean, that's been the philosophy of CCA, is to come together and to aggregate as much demand as possible to garner interest, you know, from the energy supplier. So I would tend to say larger consortium on that would be better. And I don't see really a downside other than, you know, if there's certain rules that different communities want, but I would recommend the idea that anybody can opt out at any time at no charge. You know, that would be the one thing I would not ever give away, because that just gives everybody a reassurance that no one's being forced into doing this. Michael?
Yeah, so I had questions about community solar, and I think we're hitting on all this right now, but so it seems that it for you to get 100% renewable, the only option was the community solar. Is that right?
Politically, you know, it's not technically the reason, but because at the time, you know, the cost of 5.91 versus the benchmark of 4.41, the only way I could get that to be part of our criteria was to bring in the community solar piece to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it may be at the point right now, Michael, where, you know, the 12-month benchmark to what you would be able to get with 100% renewable will be very much on par. Okay. And it could stand alone. You know, as far as administratively, it would be a lot cleaner. Okay. If we had done just community solar, boom, one program, that's it. And then come on with 100% renewable later. But the way the opportunity came about for us, you can see that they kind of had to be done, you know, simultaneous with us.
Yeah.
But I generally wouldn't recommend it. If you have a board that, you know, is I guess more interested in, you know, the renewable whole genre, then, you know, knowing that one doesn't have to happen exactly at the same time as the other would probably work out fine.
And regarding community solar, so does that have to be within your municipality?
No, you mean the array?
Yeah.
The array, the only rule is that it must be in your utility service area. So anywhere in National Grid's territory, which goes, you know, Buffalo, way out into central New York. So if you're in NYSEG, anywhere in NYSEG, someone puts a solar array, you could and jump onto that. And, you know, that's where Joule helped us a lot too, is, you know, getting bids from, you know, various arrays, advising us, you know, and here's the thing. I mean, when you bring an engineer in for a project, you know, you're going to choose the lowest responsible bidder. And what you're expecting your engineer to do is to evaluate the credentials and know that if you choose that person, they're qualified to do it. And that's where Joule, you know, really helped us to look at different arrays to say where they were in the process. Have they, have they got the initial approval locally? Do they have this, that, and, you know, do they have the resource to actually, you know, complete the project? Where are they? So they came back with, whoops, my thing just, I think about 5 different choices for us, and then recommended one that was, you know, of the right size, had a good program, and would be able to come on board when we wanted it.
Okay.
The other thing, and I don't know if they still do this, Michael, but they also negotiated I think they call it a customer acquisition fee, and that I don't know how much Jewel kept for that, but what you realize with CCA and community solar is the solar provider for community solar, they can't get any of the credits unless they have customers. And to fill up your array by going onesies and doing mailings and all this other stuff is expensive. So when they can get, 700,000 customers in one fell swoop, okay, that's real value to them. So in any event, the long story short is Village of Lima will be receiving about a $35,000 grant from Jewel Community that's coming from this customer acquisition fee that was negotiated, that Jewel negotiated as part of it for us. And we didn't even know to do that.
Yeah.
And we're going to use it to replenish street trees out on Main Street. So Jewel is very helpful in that process.
So to confirm here or clarify here, it is key to pass this local law so that you can start talking to somebody like Jewel to help you sort of navigate this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that they'll probably talk to you anyway, but they know you're at least to that next level where you can start taking advantage of opportunities should they come your way.
Mm-hmm.
There's no advantage to not having the CCA law, none whatsoever. Okay,
Yeah.
None.
Great. I think Marie has a question.
Okay.
I have two things. One, it's my understanding, and I'm sure Gina will jump in here if I'm wrong, that in order to say that you're supplying 100% renewable energy, you have to be buying the RECs. And so my question is, are you buying the RECs?
That term never came up with us. It is, we're going to through Constellation Energy. It is certified 100% renewable, New York State generated. Okay, and for the NYSERDA Clean Energy Community to get your points, it has to be that. It's not just 100% renewable. It has to be 100% renewable, New York State generated.
In New York, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we as our municipal entity isn't into any of the whatever RECs or whatever you're calling them. We're not involved with that. Maybe somewhere in the fine print or something, Jewel is worrying about that, but we're not.
Okay. And my other question was, I have heard that the opt-out is being challenged, that there may be a lawsuit going on at this time to have it be changed to an opt-in. Have you heard anything about that?
No, maybe Gina, would you know anything about that?
I do know that the Public Service Commission is discussing it. I don't know if it has to do with a lawsuit or someone just questioned whether that was fair or what, but I do know, yeah, they are considering whether that should remain. I haven't heard anything about it for a while.
That would be terrible, right?
Oh, it would be awful.
Yeah.
There would be no point in doing it really, to try to pull customer by customer out and, get an action from people. It's going to be incurring a lot of cost, and, the take up rate is obviously going to be a lot less. Even though people might want it or be ambivalent, they have to do something. And that's why, you don't want to do it and it's going to be a price gouge. I mean, you want to have it so it's, economically feasible as well as, being environmentally sound. But I can't believe that with the momentum behind CCA right now and the whole philosophy of the opt-out, as being the reason why it can be successful. If they change that, if the goal is to try to put less CO2 in the atmosphere, that's going in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll tell you what, if it gets any steam, there'll be a lot of people on our side of the issue screaming to that Public Service Commission as well. Now, one of the other side notes to bring up about the community solar is in National Grid territory, through Public Service Commission orders, they became the first utility that implemented single billing. Okay. Prior to that, in National Grid territory, if you were in community solar, whether it was CCA or not, a person would receive two bills. Okay. They'd receive a bill for the energy supply from their solar array, and then they would get their bill from National Grid, and buried in the National Grid bill would be a credit that would end up, when you add the two bills together, saving you 10%. Okay. But imagine trying to explain that double talk to people, that you're going to save money, but you're getting two bills now. So, you know, one of the reasons we waited as long on our community solar is we wanted to make sure, you know, there was single billing. So, but even at that, National Grid, you'd think that they could put the credit on the bill, a descriptive credit that says solar credit or community solar credit. No, it's on a line that says other credits and transfers, and then there'd be a negative number there. So you have to explain to people that thing that's a negative number there is your solar credit. The other thing I'll say about National Grid is we had a delay of about 2 months in the implementation of our 100% renewable supply, because Constellation Energy, you know, so we had to get the whole data, our Joule community assets had to get the all the database from National Grid. That then went over to Constellation Energy. They generated account numbers, send them back to National Grid, and then National Grid said, we don't like the numbers you're giving us, so you got to start again. So the two fought over that for a couple months, and it was actually a couple months where that was when that price spike was in the National Grid of 7.2 cents a kilowatt hour. I think it was back in a year ago, like this time of year. So, you know, our residents missed out on that opportunity. So just know that you need a good administrator that has seen these problems and can foresee them and can be more proactive with utility and the energy supplier to make sure that, you know, you don't make the same errors that were made with ours. You know, there was a lot of firsts with ours, and, you know, with that, you know, things happened that everybody learned how to do things better. Michael, or I don't know if Marie or Mary or Jonathan, who's next?
Mary Alice, your hand was up, so I don't.
It's Mary.
Yeah, that was me. I think you've sort of covered this in the discussion already, but my question had to do with those RECs. I didn't really understand about the 90%, 10%, and what difference does it make to the community. And I was also somewhat interested in whether when you talked about community solar, you were talking about new solar, you know, community solar installations that were being built, or just finding somebody who'd already built one and buying, you know, making a contract with them.
You know, for ours, Jonathan, they were new arrays that had not had any subscribers put on them yet. I believe because of the great deal that it is, I'm going to imagine that there's not going to be a lot of excess, you know, community solar just floating around there to just take for the taking. So I would venture to guess that probably a community going into it is going to have to be buying into a new array that is not established. It's just a guess, but you know, there was no excess capacity available when we went out. You know, we had to wait. It was about 2 years actually for these to come on board. Now, Michael, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess this is along the same line as, and Marie, maybe you can let me know if I say this correctly, but it's my understanding with the meeting with the Ithaca folks that getting enough renewable energy is going to be an issue. And I was just curious, am I understanding that correctly? And
you know, I don't know I really don't know what the renewable supply is out there right now. There was plenty available. It's just a matter of what price it's going to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe the 5.9 that we got, it might go up now because there's more demand for it. But commensurate with that is, you know, a lot of the standard electricity is being generated with a natural gas, and you know, with things happening in Ukraine, and you know, the world market on natural gas is, you know, things are going to get expensive on natural gas, I imagine too. So I would guess that, you know, both are going to go up in price. Just hope that the renewable stays, you know, in a place that's competitive.
Yeah. And I had a question about the local law that I mentioned in the email in terms of modifying it. I had a look at the one that the town of Ithaca passed, which looks like they modified it a decent amount. Maria, it looks like Dryden's, you basically followed the template other than filling in Dryden for the various blanks that need to be filled in. John, do you have any insight on, do you need to modify this? Are there any reasons why you would?
You know, our objective was just to give us the home rule power. You know, it was 5 years ago, Michael, so it's a little foggy, but I don't recall doing any markup on it. Jewel Community gave us a template, said, here, fill in this stuff. We had our attorney look it over and said, okay. And like any local law, then you send it on to the, you know, Department of State, and, you know, you get it approved as a local law. So we didn't do, I can say for certain we didn't do any great reworking of that template.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, Gina, what is the origin of that template? You sent it to me.
Yeah, I contacted NYSERDA for an earlier template and they did not respond to me. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
However, Dryden had their lawyer look at the template and there were some red flags, and they modified it a bit and asked if NYSERDA would give CEC credit for that, the way they modified it. And the answer begrudgingly was yes. So it's possible to modify it and have it still count for the CEC credit. But there were some weird things about it. If you read it closely, and Marie, I'm sure you've read it closely and saw that there were some peculiarities of it, particularly because it says this law establishes a CCA.
Yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't establish a CCA. It establishes the possibility of you getting a CCA. So Dryden didn't like that, and I can understand that. And there were several other things that they wanted changed, and I did run it by NYSERDA, and they said yes, if they were to pass it with those modifications, it would be acceptable.
Gotcha. So I maybe didn't read Dryden's close enough to pick up on these changes. Although I do know what you were saying about establishing a CCA and being kind of put off by that. And so, but to confirm, I guess the version that you sent me is the version prior to Dryden marking it up. So I don't know if it's possible for Dryden to, if we could just use Dryden's, or maybe that's a topic of conversation for a later time. But
well, we're still we're still juggling that.
Mhm.
And so oh gosh, is it the city or the town that has passed the enabling legislation? The town.
The town, yep.
Yeah.
And so I now have a copy of that Ithaca, the town of Ithaca's enabling legislation, and we will compare that to ours, to the original template, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
So are you finished, Michael?
Yep, I am.
Here's something that's worrying my mind. Did anybody else sit in the webinar at noontime that Gay Nicholson had put together with David Kay from Cornell and a couple of other people? And I'm sorry?
Gina says she did, Marie, but I did
Yeah.
not. I didn't see any other.
Okay. So if one of our goals in forming a CCA is to promote more renewable energy development by, putting up this big sign, hi, we're here, we're a municipality, we want to buy renewable energy. If that's one of our goals, and yet there are many, many projects in the pipeline, so to speak, in New York going forward with solar, are we really going toward that goal? And could we use our time and energy in a slightly different direction and have more effect? I don't have an answer, but it's really troubling me. David had some really big numbers of utility scale projects that are waiting in permit land to get approved.
You're saying the CCAs won't really do anything more than what's already happening. Is that right?
Yeah, and we know that at this point in time, there's so much demand that the community solar projects are subscribed, and there's waiting lists and that sort of thing. So are we using our own personal energy in the right direction when we think about forming a CCA? I don't know, but I put the question out there.
Well, what else other than, market demand can a customer affect a change?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're thinking about putting investors together and build your own, renewable energy generation, which
Mhm.
I can't really see happening. So it seems like the only thing what a small individual, customer of a utility can do. And, even, so think about it. Okay, the community solar is oversubscribed right now. Well, that's going to do nothing but create more incentive to build more. And if that demand wasn't there, then you wouldn't see as many arrays going up.
Right.
And similarly for the industrial scale projects, I'm sure the financial people behind those looked at the projections of demand and said, yeah, this project is warranted. Now, as more CCA comes on and brings in more demand, it's going to just make, I would think a more incentive to put additional, fields in play. So doing nothing's just, I know that's not what you're looking at, but I unless you're getting into the energy generation business. Now in the Village of Lyman, we do have our own 2-acre array that we did build and is supplying most of our energy for all our municipal buildings. So, that is an option. If you want to, locally create an array to do that kind of thing. We did it with a power purchasing agreement with no money down. We just about breaking even now. We have a fixed price for 25 years. So as years go on, the cost is going to stay the same for us, and the credits that we get for putting it out on the grid are going to increase. So we'll start making money. So that is another avenue that we have done here. But you need land and yeah.
And that's all good. But as you were saying, John, if the demand wasn't there, there wouldn't be these gigawatts of development plans ready to move when they get their permitting. So the demand is there. Those of us who are really concerned about getting our energy from renewable sources, if we can put up solar on our roofs or in our yards, we do. If we can join a community solar farm, we do. My household goes through the Energy Co-op of America Renewables as my ESCO. So anything we don't get from community solar, we get 100% renewables that way. But the demand is there.
But Marie, it's a changing thing over time, right? So the end game we want is for everybody to be on renewables. So
Yes.
Isn't that what CCA is leveraging and pushing for?
It absolutely is, sure. And if I thought we could get 100% renewables for, a half a penny less than NYSEG is getting as their supply cost, now I'd jump on it. I don't think we can. I think we can increase the percentage of renewables in what the CCA will promise to deliver. But I don't think in this market right now, we can go to 100% renewables, New York sourced, and beat the price. So.
Marie, I had a couple of questions on what you were saying. One is just, so there are these huge utility solar plants.
Yeah.
What fraction of their total electric generation does it really amount to? Is it just huge by comparison to, the solar, community solar that's out there right now? Or are they, because I think that for them, they're probably under pressure to do a gradual transformation to being more and more renewable, but that may take decades for them to get to where a town could get, in a year if they could do it now. So it seems like that. I'd want to know more about whether that really was if next year they were going to have 100% renewable energy, I would agree with you that it wouldn't be worth us doing anything, but I don't think that's the case.
I don't think that's the case either.
I think I would say that adopting a CCA is only for like 2 years, it's not going to preclude working on other
Right.
ways to get there.
Also, so the CCAs come in different flavors, right? So, and that's the next decision we'll have to make.
Mhm.
Yeah, on that point, when we went out for bid, we did the 100% renewable choice. And then we did also have a choice there for a standard mix. Okay. I don't now if you wanted to be in CCA and get the standard mix, you had to take an action. You had to call and say, I want the standard mix, versus if you just were getting opted, if you didn't do anything, you were going to get the 100% renewable. So we did have that option out there, but I don't know if any people actually took it, and I'm not sure. It was more of like maybe to appease some people who just wanted to see what the bid price for that could be. But that was kind of indicative of what the standard price was going to be over the next 2 years. So I did use that kind of as leverage, because that was like it was in the low fives, which with our community solar we easily beat that price.
Is there the danger that you could lock yourself into a contract and then prices could get lower for the standard mix or something, and you would have to start explaining yourself to your customers that they're
I mean, this is the thing, Michael, when whether you do it through an ESCO or through a CCA, and you're going with a fixed price for some period of time, you are taking a risk. Or, on the other hand, you might say, if you don't do that, you're taking a risk to be on the monthly volatile market.
Yeah.
So nobody has a crystal ball. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I will say, the energy suppliers have figured that fixed price, so they have a pretty good confidence they're not going to lose their shirt on it. All right.
If the fixed price turned out to not be good, wouldn't everybody just opt out? You can opt out at any time. So if it stopped being a deal,
it could.
And then what would happen to the municipality? Do they get left holding a bag, or with any kind of a?
No.
Okay.
No, there's no cost. There's no
contract, not a contract that says we will buy X number of kilowatts.
No, we do not have that in the contract. If it goes to 0 customers, that's the only person who's going to get hurt is your administrator, who's taking some small fraction, not from the municipality, but from the energy supplier. But no, there's no risk Now, on the other hand, Jonathan, if you look out in Westchester County with Con Edison customers, they've been trying to flock into the CCAs, okay? Because, they have some pricings, I've heard, up to almost 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Once they took off that nuclear power plant, near New York City, so it can happen both ways, but I don't know, at least what I read,
But Westchester lost their supplier of renewable energy. Everybody's back to the standard mix right now.
That's news to me.
The supplier could not supply for the price that they had contracted with. This has happened several places in New York State. So the supplier took a walk. And at that point, everybody in the CCA is changed back to, a utility customer, standard mix.
Oh, that's the first I've heard of that.
Gina, can you?
Yeah, that was pretty shocking to me that the ESCO bailed on it, and the contract was just
They
broken.
just, yep,
Walked away from it. I mean, they could end up in court, of course, but yeah, that's not a comforting fact. There were several municipalities that had their ESCOs walk away from the contract because they said they couldn't fulfill it.
yep.
Okay, now, I would say, okay, that's the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
But so compared to not doing CCA, you're just back to where you would be anyway.
Right.
So, I mean, okay. So I don't think that's a reason not to try to pursue it.
Right.
Yeah,
It's just trying to explain the whiplash to your
Yeah,
constituent, which seems like it's something that you could do if you tried hard. Any other questions for John?
Well, John, well, this is super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah,
okay, I'm glad I could help you.
yeah,
really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Okay, all right, well,
All
being-
your great research and figuring everything out. It's very, very helpful. Thank you.
yeah, Mary, what I've told a lot of people is in all the endeavors doing community solar and 100% renewable, I never talked about greenhouse gases or climate change, because as soon as I would say something like that, it would have been a turnoff. So
Yep.
everything was done with spreadsheets and finance. In fact, one of the very conservative Republicans, when he was getting off the board, said, I like the way you did your things, because you never really, talked about the things he didn't want to hear about. But anyway, I hope that as we move forward, we can make more people will be receptive of the environmental argument as well. And I think that is growing, especially younger people. So, I'm in a very heavily conservative area, so I tell people, if we could do it here, in the most, I wouldn't say the most adverse political environment, but not a real, conducive one. Certainly in the area down there where you are, where there's, a lot of very progressive people in terms of the environment.
It's true, but even that crowd cares about their finances.
Yeah.
None of it matters to them whether or not it's going to cost more or less. And so if they can have both of those things, they get really excited. But
yeah, well, the other thing is, even if it's close, okay, you have to realize that the supply part of your bill is the smaller of the two, between the delivery and the supply. So, if your supply is 5% more for renewable, when you add the entire bill up, it's going to be like 3% more, but I don't know. Even with ours, 60% of the people said, okay,
Right.
So, and the point is, even if it was 10%, that's 10% more people promoting renewable than if you do nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I want to go drive out to Lima and see.
Yeah. How's the real estate there?
You got to talk to the teenagers, get them on
yeah,
board.
Mhm.
they're generally, at least the kids we've seen from the local school district, they've got a green team there and they're really into it. And when I went up to the town of Brighton and I spoke there a couple of years ago, there was probably about a dozen high school students who got up and spoke in favor of doing community choice aggregation, how important it was for their future. So I have the utmost confidence in young people to save this world.
Yay.
Cultivate
Yeah.
that constituency.
Yeah. But we have to show them that we're trying.
Mhm.
That's
You
right.
know?
That's right. I agree. That's inspiring. I like that. So,
All right, well,
Yeah.
keep me in mind, Mark, if you ever want me to come down to a meeting or what have you, I'd be happy to come down. Or via Zoom or whatever be helpful, and Michael and team. If nothing else, I can provide you with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
All
John.
right.
Really
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thanks for inviting me. Nice to meet all of you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Well, I think we should pass the local law, I guess.
Yeah, well, that discussion was next on my agenda. Marie and Gina, you're welcome to stick around, or whatever you want to do.
Well, if you don't need me, I won't lurk.
I'm sure we'll have some questions at some point for you, but I can send them in an email as well. So yeah, so thanks so much for joining and all the information you were providing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.
I'll stick for a while.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Marie, it's so good to see you.
Yes.
So just to help get the thing rolling, I would like to make as a committee formally recommend to the board that they pass this local law. And now we can discuss it, but
I second that.
So, okay, I'm getting used to process here. Jonathan, can you reiterate what you just said? You're making.
I mean, I didn't make a motion that was very explicit in all its terms, but I'm moving that the EIC develop a recommendation to the board, and I don't know if it has to include that template letter and how it should be messed with or not. But one way or the other, coming up with a positive recommendation.
To pass that local law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to do what Marie and others are doing and look at these different versions, or leave that to the board to do that, or what you're thinking about that?
And you should also run it past the town attorney, whoever that is.
Sure. Yeah,
Sure.
but still Crow. Still okay.
So Mark, I'll just jump in here. I think what the board has on their plate, but you can speak to it differently. It may be helpful for EIC to spend a little time with the local law and see what we might pick up from town of Ithaca and the town of Dryden who have manipulated it, and then provide a recommendation of the form of the local law so that you would have something to work with. And then I would ask the town board then to take it to the town attorney and deal with it from there, but at least you'll have the insight from this committee. And in the recommendation that that you adopt a local law, and that this is a text that we're recommending.
Great, I agree, 100%. That sounds great. I'm standing up so you can actually see me.
Yeah, we can see you better. You're closer to the camera.
I'm here at the town hall because there's such a demand for in-person meetings.
So then Jonathan and Michael, Marie, what I would suggest is that we get copies of the 3 local laws. We have the template, and we get the other 2, and I try to highlight where the differences are and pick up on what's important to us. I think that what we learned from today is that just the whole idea of getting the local law adopted is really the key thing.
Yeah.
And that we should not be looking for a lot of special Caroline tweaks unless we see something in there from in the generic law that provides us pause. So that's what I try to just do, the basics of it all possible.
One of the things that we found when Gina submitted our version to NYSERDA is that we had backed down from what I'll call CCA 3.0, which is what Ithaca is trying to do, back it down to CCA 1.0, and we had only put in our law that we would be looking for electrical supply, not electrical and gas, and maybe financing for rooftop solar or microgrids or anything of that. And one of the people at NYSERDA who commented on it said, why would they limit themselves to that, just the electricity? In order to change that in the future, you'd have to amend the law. So I don't know whether it's a better idea to go for the whole thing in the enabling legislation and then just to pick up on the CCA 1.0.
I guess one reaction I have right off is I don't want to create a CCA for natural gas because I don't want to promote it. I don't want to make it cheaper for people.
Here's a thought, Jonathan.
Huh?
The way the law is written at state level, you can't get usage information unless you have the CCA looking for all of that data. If you can get usage information on gas, then you can go to those people who are using gas and say, this is what you paid for gas, you know, for your household last year, compared to what we can get for electricity. If you were to electrify your house and get rid of your gas, this is the chunk of money that you wouldn't be paying. So would you consider thinking about making that transition? And, you know, you can't make that argument if you don't have the data. You can only get the data if you include it in the CCA. I'm playing devil's advocate here.
But you're talking about each individual person there having to put a lot of effort into it. You know, it's sort of like John was talking about, you know, if they have to do something, you're going to lose half of them, you know, most of them right there, even if they kind of liked it.
But isn't that one of our goals in working on CCA is to reduce emissions overall? And if we could get people to change off of natural gas to electrify their houses, that would reduce emissions.
But it sounds to me like something that would require a whole organization like Solar Tompkins. I mean, you're talking about really intricate, in-depth community outreach to go to individual people and talk about their bills and 3 or 4 complicated scenarios. And so from that perspective, it doesn't seem attractive when the CCA for electricity can be something that does not require, you know, somebody to make it their life's.
I don't disagree with you at all.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. And that's good to know what you were saying about we can get that information if we were to just make the initial thing broad enough. But I'm.
Mhm.
So
I
I have
qualms
my
about-
hand up. I had my hand up to say, I think where we are in our community, it would be so clean just to go with electricity, make it an economic issue. I really like John saying, I never brought up global warming, you know, I didn't ever push those buttons. Prove that it can be good, prove that it can happen, prove that it's real, and then go for the bigger picture in what I'm seeing in our community. We need to just do the first thing to make it real.
Mm-hmm. Yep, agreed.
Wait, so Mary Alice, just to confirm, you're saying not worry about doing 100% renewable and just
oh, I want to do 100% renewable.
Yeah.
But just electricity.
I see.
I just want it to be a real clean just this real thing that people aren't going to get all up in arms over. They're already going to be up in arms that they think you're putting it through yet one more thing. But yeah, all renewable electricity. I don't think you're going to be able to say, oh, look what you're using for gas and you could electrify your house for less. That's not on my horizon that I'm seeing.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Is it what I've been struggling with is it even possible to do 100% renewable right now?
Yeah.
Right.
With the prices and the supply. So I guess that's what passing this local law and hiring an administrator to help us work out the math would be doing. So
we get our electricity as you do, Marie, through the cooperative, and it's expensive actually. We're paying quite a bit more for that.
Yep.
And I'm willing to do that, but it's not an argument that's going to fly with a lot of my neighbors.
I know.
So I have to head off at this time. So I'm hoping that, I don't know, Mark, can you supply us with the draft laws from the other two communities, and then we can look at those?
I
ahead of the next
have them.
meeting? You have them? Thanks,
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah, I can and I may have sent them out, but I'll resend them if I didn't. And
Perfect.
yeah.
Great.
And keep in mind that Dryden's is still in flux, so.
Good to know.
Great.
Hey, I want to thank you, Michael, for picking up this really important thing. I know that Mark's really overworked and we want to do what we can. So I really appreciate your leadership on.
No problem. Well, thank you. I was really excited to see John's presentation prior to this and just thought I think he was a really good guy to come and speak with us. So
He could come down to a town meeting and give a presentation. That would be
Yeah, he could
actually
do,
really good.
all our meetings are hybrid, so if he wanted to attend remotely too, I mean, it'd be great to have him in person, but
Yeah.
Yep.
that's the virtue of remote meetings. I mean, it's super effective. And I mean, tonight, I was the least visible person. So at least on my screen. So
That's so true, Mark, because I'm not going to in-person meetings.
he offered to come in person for the board, and yeah, maybe we should take him up on it. And just to clarify Don's points, so I'll pass around these drafts, and then I guess somehow we have to go do a compare documents and see what got changed between all of them. And I didn't do a good enough job because I didn't see all the changes that Dryden made. So
How long is this template?
it's maybe 2 or 3 pages, I think. Although Ithaca's might be longer. I'm not sure.
Longer.
Yeah.
So we should, are we putting this on our agenda for the next meeting to compare notes? Is that the idea, or do we want to bat it around by email or something? But I mean, I'm happy to wait till the next meeting. It's not like it's an emergency, but
So does somebody have the capability to make this a Google Doc so that we can track each other's comments?
I could do that.
Okay.
I'll do that. And
Then we can just communicate through that Google Doc between now and the next meeting.
mhm.
And then we can just look at each other's comments and see if we can come to a consensus and then be able to bring it forward.
Yeah, and I guess that was a question I had for Mark was regarding the timeline. I'm happy to be as, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but in terms of the timeline as we want to be, but is it necessary? I know that there is a bit of a timeline regarding if we ever did want to do Ithaca's, we'd have to have this law. If we want to join Ithaca's efforts, we'd have to have this law passed. So do you have a thought on when the earliest would be that the board might vote on this?
I think it, well, we're we're working on the budget now. I'll introduce it at the next meeting and, yeah. It seems, I would think not until November at the earliest,
Mhm.
you know. So, that would give us time, and then if we had at the October, at our EIC meeting in October, we could hash it over and decide if we have something to put to the board or.
Okay. So we could possibly aim for a November presentation to the board or December as
Yeah.
well, depending on.
Those two, I would
Yeah.
say.
I should put in that Mary Alice and I probably will not be able to attend the next EIC meeting because we'll be out of town.
We're gonna be gone for several weeks and kind of out of,
Commission,
yeah,
Mhm.
well, just no phone reception.
No problem.
I'm gonna sign off now, guys. This was really good.
Yeah,
Good.
thanks, Marie.
Everybody.
Thanks, Mary.
Yep. Take care.
take care.
Great.
So I'm going to sign off as well, and I'll just look for the Google Doc from you, Michael.
Sounds
And
good.
I'll share comments, and if Jonathan and Mary Alice can do the same, then we'll have everybody, and we can and hopefully invite other members of EIC.
Yeah.
Then we can have those comments just to work through. My sense is we're going to have a lot of things that we agree on, and the things that we don't, you have to chew on, hopefully by email or some other venue if necessary.
Yeah.
To try to move this along. And I agree with you, Michael, that the sooner we can have it available for the town board, they will need to run it by the town attorney, and you have to set up a public hearing before they adopt a local law. So the sooner we can get it in their hands, the sooner that process can get started.
Okay.
One more question before you leave, Don.
Sure.
and Mostly to Michael. When do we have to sign on with Ithaca? And after Don's presentation, for the people who already have some opinions about this, is that a good idea?
Yeah, so I can provide some updates from a meeting that I had with Rod Howe of Ithaca and Louise. Gary Torres. I'm sure you know him, and so I could provide some updates on that. It seems a little wishy-washy on the timeline. Things keep getting pushed back for them, but it's my understanding, I think Gina hit on this last meeting, that there's really no downside to, or we don't really have to make a decision. As long as we have this local law passed, then we can be a part of them if we want, and we can, so it's really just getting the local law passed, and then we can make decisions after that.
Okay.
I mean, my sense from this whole discussion and everything is that, that we can keep the local law as loose as possible and then make the hard decisions later. It's the, as I think John described, it's the home rule enabling legislation. And then we can go from there. So I'm hoping we don't have to make a lot of decisions in order to get that done.
Yeah.
But yeah.
See you, Don.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. We can wrap this up. I'll just glance at my notes from these meetings and see if there was anything that stood out here. I think there were some questions that we had last time about, what is the role if we did join with Ithaca? What is the power dynamic? And they got a few questions on that, and I think they almost were getting offended by people wondering, like, does Ithaca have is Ithaca using the surrounding towns to help them? And anyways, they were like, hey, we would all be in this together, and each town, once you formed a CCA, each town would have an equal vote in any decisions that would have to get made. So yeah, they seemed a little like, why are you guys so concerned about this? And also, so I think Ithaca's trying to do CCA 3.0, so a more complicated version of CCA, which has these, I think the distinction would be having the distributed energy resources, like trying to do microgrids and put solar panels on individual buildings, and also financing options to be able to finance that. That seems to be an optional thing. If we were to join with Ithaca, we wouldn't necessarily have to do that. We could just do CCA 2.0, basically what we've been discussing thus far. So there's a little bit of.
We might need to include language about that in the local law that we passed, wouldn't we? Wasn't that what Marie was saying, was that in order to have the right to do any of those things, it's our law enabling us to make such.
I think she did say something about that.
Yeah. I'll have to go and I might have to rewatch the video because I was moving rooms during that conversation regarding DERs. Okay.
Stephanie Redmond from the town of Enfield, she at supervisor's meeting, she was just saying that that's what she's wanting to do for Enfield, because it would be a way to incentivize or promote smaller scale solar that's situated in what you would consider appropriate sites, or on buildings or garages or whatever. So I don't know. That's all I know, that she said that. So it caught my ear. So yeah. So
yeah. She's one of the folks that had some hard questions for those two about all of this. Let's see. Their goal is 100% renewable, but they seem to have. They're not sure if they're going to be able to hit that, and that's without going for like Texas wind recs and things like that. So I'm not sure. I think it's probably once they sign on with an administrator and figure out the finances that they'll be able to figure it out. And in terms of their administrator, they're currently having Paul Fenn of Local Power working for them, but he might not be their administrator. So they have stuff up in the air.
okay.
So
Great. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. Yep. And then I just met with Marie a few weeks ago as well, but we've kind of hit all the points. She has lots of good questions about CCAs, I think, to consider. So
She's always great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thoughtful.
Yeah. I might need to. I'm in the baby's room, and I may have woken her up. So.
Oh dear.
Well, we're ready.
Yeah.
Crank up the bassinet.
What? Yeah, I know. I need to talk to it and make it work harder. So, yeah, I think that was all I had on the agenda. But I think we know what to do next. So.
That's really super. So
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. We'll have to sing next time, so we'll keep her to sleep.
Yeah.
We'll sing lullabies.
Yeah.
But you'll have to have a picture to put up during while we're
Yeah.
singing the lullaby.
Thanks for sending me
I'll,
that picture. She's darling.
I will.
Or
Thank
bring
you.
the camera over so we can see.
Yeah.
Jonathan wants to see baby
I
Jake.
can, we can see if she's awake or not.
good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
She.
Good night.
Okay.
Nope, she's still
Sweet
sleeping.
dreams.
Thankfully. See you
Okay.
later.
See ya. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Oops.